Hi, my name is Dina Toledo, and this is Assignment 7. This week we're focusing on data, and here is my data that I'm going to be presenting. I've been tasked to make several meeting agendas and explain why we're going to be using certain data points. This is for the ELA department within my school. For our foundational content, we are going to be using the first and third Thursday ELA, the PLC meeting just for the ELA department. Um, and we're going to be discussing data. So just to break it down, my school actually, we have PLC meetings every day. Um, Two of them are content based, two are entire grade level, and one is a miscellaneous PLC meeting. Um, yeah, we meet with our ELA coach every Tuesday and Thursday, and we talk about data now, but it's not focused in this way that I'm going to break it down in the coming slides. We're going to do we're going to be doing a data dive, and the data we're going to be doing using is from Linkit Form A. Now, I was recently in a meeting where the stakeholders were shown just the results from Linkit Form A. That assessment at the beginning of the year, we expect our students not to do well with the assessment because it's showing how they should do over the course of the year, not what they have already learned. So at the beginning of the year, their scores are typically very low. But that is one of the data points that we have to use. And so this third bullet is just an explanation of that for stakeholders when we do this presentation for not just teachers in our building and not just people who are education minded, but for anybody. Lincoln Data tests the students at the beginning of the year on the standards they should master by the end of the year. The data points should not be mastered by Form A, but we should see steady growth from Form A to Form C. Very simple. And for this data dive, we have two objectives. The overarching objective is to effectively analyze data to create effective small group lessons that impart with our district reading initiative and interventions. Read 180. There's a couple others. I'll get into that in a little while. We'll improve our students' reading scores on state level assessments. That's the overarching goal. We are a school in status, so there are a lot of things that the district throws in our plates so that we can bring our students higher and higher every year. And our sub-objective would be to work together to analyze data to create small group lessons that benefit the students in our classes to ultimately increase our students' overall reading level, including reading fluency and reading comprehension. We know that both of those things are not the exact same. We want to make sure that our students are learning to read fluently, and we also want to know that they're understanding what they read. Those are two very big differences when we're talking about reading. So the meeting dates and the information, like I said, PLCs are held. We have 5 meetings a week. 2 of them are just for ELA. So that's what the PLC meetings I'm talking about. There are Thursdays meetings are going to be dedicated to analyzing data to develop the next steps. The meetings are 40 minutes long, and the initial meeting dates for this will be December 7th, December 14th, December 21st, January 4th, and January 11th. Now, although I put 5 dates there, I'm only going to be diving into 3 of those dates. Each meeting group is comprised of English language arts teachers who work within the same grade level. Now, there are some instances where we have special education teachers who are working on with a self-contained population, which is our LLD students. They might not be meeting with their grade level because those teachers teach more than one grade level. So for our first meeting, the agenda would be grows and glows. That's how we're going to start every meeting. And the reason we're going to do this, the rationale is team building, But really and truly, it's not really so much as a team building thing, more of a vent session. I've come to realize that if at the beginning of meetings the teachers are not given that time, nothing is going to happen for the rest of the meeting. People are going to hone in on the fact that their voice wasn't heard, to vent about what has happened during the day, during the week, things of that nature. These meetings in the very beginning are a safe space so that our teachers can get that off their chest so that we can be productive for the rest of the meeting. Um, the next 15 minutes of this meeting will be analyzing the linked data. And I have an example of what that data actually looks like on the next slide. So basically, the team members are going to review their data points, and each individual will highlight four of the weakest areas per class. The data is broken down, it gives you a list per class that you teach. So, for instance, I teach 2 ELA classes, some teachers have 3 ELA classes. It'll give you a breakdown of each of those classes. And then after that, we're going to discuss the importance of the standards that we've identified. Now, we know that all standards are not created equally. So, one of the standards, um, so we're going to basically create a priority list. We know that one of the sixth grade standards is RL 610, which is reading grade level text. That is something that can't really be taught in isolation. It's something that is an overarching um, standard, and it's something that we know that we'll get to if we're doing everything else correctly. Our students will get to that by the end of the year. But there are certain standards that are very heavy with domain specific vocabulary, like RL 6.6, which is point of view and author's purpose. We know that those, if we don't actually explicitly teach that, our students aren't going to get it. And the last thing in all of our meetings is we're going to have some wrap up time. Here's an example of the data. So this is my actual data for my students for this school year. My class average for this assessment. Again, this isn't what they weren't taught these skills already. So my class average was 29%. And these are some of the standards that my students really struggled with. Again, 610, that's one of the things that we're going to work on toward the entire over the entire year. It's not something that we can focus on at the beginning of the year because sometimes we need to hone it back a little bit, and we need to work on some fifth grade text so that our students are working with those individual texts by the end of the year. But analyzing a particular sentence, determining author's purpose and point of view, those are some of the things that I can say, okay, these are some of the things I need to work on with my students. The next question is, how are you going to do that? Which brings me to the next thing. So, one of the things, because we're a school in status, one of the things that we've been tasked with is working in small groups. They want to see small groups multiple times a week. At this point, it's not required for every single day, but that's what they want to see. So, for the next meeting, after analyzing the data, we need to start breaking our students up into several groups. Now, the groups are going to be different based on each class, based on what our students are doing. Within the program, Link It, there is a way to break down the students into groups, but we know that the program just looks at the data. It doesn't see what we are seeing in the classroom. We know that maybe it groups Johnny and David together, but we know that Johnny and David cannot work together. So how are we going to separate them so that it works best for our classrooms? And that's what we're going to do for our second meeting. We're going to look at the student groupings, and this, we're going to have time to talk with other teachers, talk with some of the co-teachers. They'll be able to work together during this time. We know that if we don't give our teachers the time to work on this together and put that accountability in there, showing, hey, this is what you need to produce by the end of this session, a lot of our teachers aren't going to do it because the climate and culture in my building is just so poor. So the next thing after creating the groups is lesson planning. I think that giving the teachers time to lesson plan, because in my opinion, our curriculum is not the strongest curriculum, even though the district has paid for like 4 reading curriculums at this point. The actual curriculum, what they want us to do, is so open-ended. Our students I'm very good at teaching my students how to write a certain way, but other teachers are not able to do that. So they struggle in that area. So coming together and planning small group lessons, I think using the data would actually help our students, and then we can figure out, hey, this is where our students are actually weakened, and this the reason is it's probably because of how we are teaching it. We can't then blame it on a weak program if we're all teaching lessons in the exact same way, which would bring us to meeting number 4. This is where we're going to again be continuing planning these lessons, these small group lessons. Within the small group lesson phase, we are going to create a Google Drive folder that is a shared folder where teachers are able to add resources to help teach um, specific standards. Now, we're also going to some teachers work very well off of a script. We're going to create some scripts. I'm personally am not one of those teachers that use a script the best. I always, oh, wait, I forgot this. So I try not to use a script, but I know that there are certain teachers on my team that really rely heavily on having a curriculum with that. And again, our curriculum doesn't have that. So although we're just looking at the one data point, we're actually stretching that data out so that we're looking at it and it's actually we're looking at it in a way that's going to benefit our students, because typically what we do is we look at data and it doesn't actually mean anything. We can't take that information and then say, hey, how am I going to use this and change how I'm doing my direct instruction, how I'm changing what I'm doing with my students? We don't ever do that because we're never actually given the time to do that. We have so many data meetings. We have just this past week, we had 5 data meetings. We had a whole building data meeting. Then we had whole grade level data meetings with the data coach, and it was a lot. But I can honestly say I took nothing from any of those meetings, because if whenever we have a data meeting, again, we're school and status, everybody's saying, oh, well, you guys are not meeting the mark. Tell me what I need to do so that I can meet the mark. And if we're just looking at data and never taking that deeper dive into saying, okay, this is why we're not meeting that, because we're not teaching this explicitly in this way. So I think that our data meetings, if we do that, we would actually be helping our students so that they can attain more. So here are a couple of other things that we need to think about. Like I said, the climate and culture in my building is very, very low. So because of that, to keep everybody accountable during PLC meetings, we have jobs, and every month the jobs change. Some of the jobs are the timekeeper, the note taker, and the tech helper. Some grade levels, the meetings actually have somebody that reviews the minutes every time they have a meeting. So in that space where it says the recap, the person that is supposed to read the minutes will do that during the recap section. Um, like I said, data meetings are typically used to point the finger. And if we're going to make true change, we need to stop pointing the finger and figure out how to best teach our students. Um, when we talk about doing things in small group, that changes our workload and actually adds a ton more work that we need to do. So, if we're actually going to be successful doing that, we need to have the time to work together so that we can come up with um different things to help us with that actual instruction. Now, my idea is eventually these folders with the resources will become things that we share not just within our grade level. So I'm in a building that's 6th, 7th, and 8th. We'll eventually be sharing everything with everybody in all 3 grade levels. Now, I teach 6th grade. Most of my students are reading in on an independent level, several grades below 6th grade. A lot of them, I think my highest right now is working at the beginning of 5th. That student is the outlier because the next group of students, they're all performing at a 3rd grade level. Now, when we're talking independence, that we want to make sure that we're building all of those students back up so that um, they're able to do the grade level curriculum stuff independently, but we know that we need to give them things that are a little bit below level so that they have that um they're encouraged so that they build that confidence. Now, the one thing I did talk about before was Read 180 and how we're using that within that's one of the interventions that the district has purchased. Now, one of the other things is we never actually analyze that data. So, moving forward after creating these lessons, I think that it would be beneficial to look at that Read 180 data and then interloop it back to this Linkit data. Okay, our students are struggling with RL1. Why? What are they working on Read 180? Are most of our students still working on phonemic awareness, and that's why they're so far behind? Because if the reason they're unable to read is because they can't actually read to read the words because they have no phonemic awareness, then that's really what we need to focus on. And maybe we need to have more intensive classes where our students are working just on those skills, something like an RTI class where the kids are just working on this intervention, and in their ELA classes they're doing something else. What we're doing now is not working in terms of what we're doing with data, we're instructing our students. It's just not working. So going back and looking at the data this way and having an open mind and trying to figure out how to then use the data and change what we're doing and work together to change it, I think will be the most beneficial thing for us to do. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.